Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks, Tuesday, September 12, 2017 is now 5 o'clock. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Yander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olson.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel. Council members Clarence Fetter.
Here.
Mike Pakshavinsky.
Here.
Tim Rienthal.
Here.
Henry Tweeten.
Here.
Mark DeMars.
Present.
Does turn quorum. Number 1, request from Transystems Trucking Company. We have 2 representatives here. Just want to state your name.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I want to thank you first all for your time. My name is Rick Larson. I'm the project manager here at East Grand Forks Transystems. We work, our customer is American Crystal Sugar. We all beats into the factory. Along with me is Mike Swan. He's my supervisor, so former police officer, city employee. Anyway, I guess, again, thank you for your time. The reason for our presence here today is today in the trucking industry, it's pretty, the drivers are getting pretty minimal. It's getting really limited drivers. And so proactive step we took is to start training our own drivers from start to finish. That way we bring them into the company, we train them the way we'd like to have them trained and do what we do. We're going to try something a little different this year. Normally we do our training during the summer and spring months where we can utilize the Crystal property in the project, but now with the bee hauling starting, we're still at a point where we need to continue our training because the driver pool is really small. So I guess that's what brought us here today is I have noticed that in the past, with Northland Tech utilizing that parking lot over there by River City Cinema in the corner, which would be a perfect lot, we'd like to ask permission or whatever we would need to do to access that area to continue our training. What we do is we would set up a range on there, and then we have a full simulator that's self-contained. We wouldn't need any power or nothing. It's self-contained power, so that's where we're at.
Henry, you have a question for him?
Mr. President, subject to approval by Northland Community Technical College, I think we should strongly support the request of Transystems Trucking. They're a very important part of the whole sugar beet growing operation together at Boyardee. And certainly anything that we can do to help them come up here and become more efficient is to our advantage and their advantage. One of the things that is a responsibility of our city council is to do all we can for businesses. And for the benefit of the people in the city council and others in attendance, the tech school at the present time have instituted a very important, different type of manufacture program, and American Crystal is one of the major employers that have people attending that course, and it's a night course. And the tech school presently has about 7 or 8 different major industries in the area that are involved. So it's a good opportunity for us all to get together. I also gave Mr. Larson another enlightening proposal. We'd like to have a substantial operation up here year-round.
Anything else, Henry?
Nothing else at this time. There may be other members of the council.
A couple questions I do have. I know we have a non-exclusive agreement with the college at this time. Mr. Galstead, have you looked at that, and what notification, and have we spoken to the college already on this?
Actually, I haven't talked to the college on it. I haven't even reviewed the contract. I apologize for that. I was in court all day. The question that I came to is because the college is in the Minnesota State college system. It's a governmental entity. We're providing that to them free of charge. I'm not certain that that avenue would be recommended to Transystems as well, so, because it's a private entity, a private enterprise. And I haven't looked at that. I'm just saying that was one of the first things that came to my mind. And then I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did speak with Brian Huschel today with NCTC. He's the one that we worked with for putting together the contract for with them for that particular parking lot. He made them aware that there might be another entity looking at utilizing that. He said he does realize that they have a non-exclusive agreement with that. He said that they'd be willing to work with whatever entities might be out there to try to schedule that and make sure that they can both use it. They would like to make sure that they would have maybe priority, if it came down to a real scheduling issue. But he said they would certainly work with whatever is best they can to make sure that they utilize it. He said they don't utilize it a whole lot. I mean, they're not out there a lot, so he said it shouldn't be that much of a conflict that they should be able to work out.
What hours, I guess I know I've seen it, but can you guys go over what time frame during the day? I mean, is it going to be Monday through Friday, really, or is it going to be just certain days?
Normally, it's a
Concentrate.
Monday through Friday project, but it's not a full day thing either, really. Normally, what we do on the classes is half a day is on the road, and half a day, which would be a 4-hour session, is on the range. So meaning that even if it worked out where we had 2, maybe even 3 days out of the week, a person could be in there, it would be 8 hours because we split the class up, like I say, half the class is on the road for half a day and then half is
So the reason I asked that is, so let's say that college comes back, says they need to use it Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Could you do the parking lot on the other days, 8 hours, the whole
Yeah.
day then?
Yeah,
You
that
know,
wouldn't,
something like that, or whatever.
we would be willing to work with that.
Does anybody else have any questions? Mr.
Would
Mayor?
you anticipate it going all year, or just kind of a build-up at the start of the campaign?
Well, depending on how it would go at first, I mean, because really the corner lot's an ideal spot. It's something we could look at utilizing, even through the summer too, because they do some work, during the summer months in the project there where it does, sometimes it kind of conflicts with the area we also have there too, so.
Mr. Vetter?
Thank you. I didn't vote for the tech college to use our parking lot. I won't be voting for you guys to use our parking lot for a couple of reasons. First off, you've seen our parking lot over at the Civic Center, and that's a result of the tech college using that parking lot for their practice field. Granted, this is a concrete one, not asphalt, but I still think in the long run that parking lot's going to get tore up a lot sooner than if we weren't using it as a school classroom. Second, that parking lot's there for all of our businesses downtown for their customers to park, and when it's being used as a classroom, that's not available for the customers of those businesses. And so for those two reasons, I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? Questions?
I'd like to make a comment. The thing is that the parking lot is, it's a public parking lot, and there's adequate, I'm downtown all the time, I know what's going on. There's plenty of room at the present time. It's not bothering the tech school, we're not bothering anybody. The volume of traffic increases in the evening when you're looking after 5 o'clock.
And that's fine, Henry. I don't see the tech college stepping up to help us fix our Civic Center parking lot.
Well, nothing becomes impossible. Let's see if we can put something together.
Mike?
I guess I'm in the camp with Mr. Vetter. We don't have a funding source to for the long-term maintenance of that parking lot. Nobody's paying into it, and I might be willing to be open to some sort of an arrangement if there was compensation involved, reasonable compensation that takes into account the investment that it takes to for a concrete parking lot of that size, and what it costs to replace and maintain over a long period of time. And so I'm not comfortable with the arrangement we have with the tech, and I'm certainly, one of the reasons for that is the very fact that they're down here saying, hey, they're doing it, we can do it, can we do it too? It is a public parking lot, but it was built by taxpayer money, and it should not be given out without some sort of compensation. I'm not so sure that having trucks training on it is the appropriate use for it. You can talk to me about loads and weights and, you know, turning pressures and all of that, but I think I would like to go back to just having that parking lot be used for the businesses downtown and have Northland find their own lot. I mean, they're a state institution. The state should fund the infrastructure it takes to run their programs. They shouldn't depend on the city to subsidize them. So that's how I feel about it. I'm not going to support this.
Mr. Riepel or Mr. Demers, you have any comments at all?
I don't remember how I voted. Just give an idea. I haven't commented yet. Is that my answers?
I guess the main question is, do we move it on to next week? Mr. Riepel? Go ahead.
I guess the only question, when you say it was 2 days, what would be the time frame? 8 to 5, 9 to 4?
That's our normal, has been 8 to 5, you know, but I mean, we're willing to adjust that time also.
I think I'd like to hear or see if there's an agreement that can be worked out between the college and them, if it is possible or not, and to see how much they're actually using it, because, I mean, I drive by there, I don't see them there that much anymore like I used to. So it's, and I don't have a problem if we don't have, if we can get an agreement with the college. I think having that being used Monday through Friday all the time might be an issue with some people. I don't know, but, you know, there's an area where you can't use anymore during the day. I mean, is that going to raise some issues with some of the people downtown, the businesses? I don't know. But
Like I said, I mean, we can be flexible.
right. No, I'm just thinking that things that could come up that we would have to address that, well, let's say we get down the road and we're getting more issues or more complaints. Would it be possible that you guys could back down the number of days you're there?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like I
I'm
said,
just asking, because you never know.
we'd work around it.
So, Tim, do you have something, sir? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at I don't know the ins and outs of the whole parking situation down there, what was agreed on originally for all the businesses down there too. I'm at the thing that I'd like to see them pay some sort of fee or help us with the maintenance of those lots, or pay into a fund that eventually we're going to have to replace those lots. I'm seeing some on the south side now where the grass is starting to come through. They're starting to get cracks. So eventually something's going to have to be done. And here, in this case here, they're on a 9-inch slab of concrete that probably isn't going to do a whole lot of damage. Maybe for a fee, we can build in something that, for the use of that lot. And I think we got to start doing something eventually, because we are going to have to replace that, and we don't have the funds just to
Right.
replace
Comes in
it.
a second. Good.
Perfect.
Follow up on his question. Do you guys pay American Crystal to use their facilities?
No, we don't. Not
No?
at this time, we don't.
Okay.
It's kind of an agreement with them.
Okay, Mayor.
Yep. I think a lot of us have the thought that up here we're all farmers. You know, whether you work in the city or whether you drive a tractor, we're all farmers up here based on really what are our underpinnings of our economy. And the more that this city can partner with agriculture, I think it's an important connection for us. It always will be. I mean, we're happy for the tourism. We're happy for all the other stuff that's coming along, manufacturing. And agriculture is always a big deal to all of us in the city. We know it. And so I guess I'd go along with those who'd say if we can find a way to iron out the contract with Northland and to come up with a fee that is acceptable to both sides, and then set that aside for future maintenance, I'd like to see that. And have it be just a fair fee.
Anybody else have any questions or anything like that? I think what we need to do is need to make sure that we do have, I think we got to go through the process, because if you look at the non-exclusive agreement still, there still needs to be notification of change, still needs to be sent to them. Following the notices, if you follow that number 13 on there, of any change, I think we need to take a look at that. So it's something that Mr. Galsted can look at that and come back next Tuesday with it. That'd be great. And also, like the administrator and Mr. Stordahl to get together, and maybe Mr. Emery too, to talk about that area, what it is, because it's the 9-inch, right? Correct? So it's different from the rest of it. It was built after the flood to handle the loads that were sitting there after the flood. For that purpose only. There was no other purpose why that thing was built that way. So we need to look at, what something like that, if there's some kind of table you can make that will look the costs and stuff like that. I think I'd like to have Mr. Galsted really look at this agreement to make sure that we're not, in violation of anything, just from that side. Mike?
Just question about the contract we have with Northland. What's the length of that? How long does it run?
It's up in the end of 18, end of this
This year, isn't
this
it?
year. So it's
So we have to renegotiate.
renegotiate
re-sign
for-
that
for
next
18.
for 2018.
for January 1st. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll look at this thing Tuesday. We'll have some answers from Mr. Galsted and hopefully Mr. Murphy and Mr. Emery and Mr. Stordahl. We'll go from there.
Okay, thank you all very
Appreciate
much
it.
for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Number 2, request for change order number 1 for GF side of Interconnect project. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Council President. I will explain what I can with this particular change order. The technical part of it, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Emery, but what we received for change order number 1 for proposal number 2 is actually on the Grand Forks side of the river. It's part of an area where they needed to do the directional boring, and apparently what they found is that the soils were poorer than expected, and required that the piping be changed from PVC to a Stordahl with restructured joint materials, whatever that means, for a cost of almost $11,000. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this has already been done as well, correct?
What's that?
Has this work already been done as well?
It has been completed, yep. And yeah, I think Mr. Murphy explained it well. Again, just due to differing soil conditions, they had anticipated boring and basically being able to push in the pipe. With the soil conditions not being able to keep that hole open, they had to kind of change their means and methods where they had to basically pull the pipe back. And in doing that, they had to have what it is, it's called restrain joints, so that that pipe couldn't pull apart. So basically, the increase is essentially just the material difference between the C900 pipe and the Stordahl pipe. They did have, it's not included here, but they did have quotes from the supplier to show what the C900 pipe was and what the Stordahl pipe was, and this is strictly a material cost difference.
During, we got approval and awarded from the bonding bill. Do these change orders, are they allowed to go back to that to recoup some of the costs through the bonding?
Yeah, and in our loan amount for PFA, initially, when the loan amount was kind of set based on as-bid costs, they did include about 5% contingencies in that loan amount too for future change orders. And
But
right
my
now-
understanding, the wording in the bonding is any cost incurred before that time it was awarded, we couldn't use bond.
Yeah, what was it?
So anything after that, we could.
Anything after May 1st, we can utilize bonding money. Anything completed prior to May 1st, I think, we can't use the bonding money.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none. Request for change order number 3 of wastewater interconnect project. Mr. Murphy.
And thank you again, Mr. Council President. This change order actually encompasses 6 change orders that were combined, that were kind of occurring around the same time. Actually, 2 of them, I believe, are eliminations, or items were removed that were found not to be necessary. The majority, or the biggest cost item of the 6 is the requirement that the steel casing pipes that are underneath the levee, originally with that respect, and apparently was the requirement at the time when this was put out, was that those be capped so that water would not flow through. But I guess the Army Corps of Engineers has changed their requirements on that, and they require it to be filled with controlled density fill so that water cannot get around those caps that flow through there in the event of a flood. I was involved with that one because that was a more significant change order request. So we did have negotiations with the contractor for that particular piece. So with that, those 6 items constitute an increase of $45,298.30.
Do we have any questions? You have anything to add, Mr. Emery?
I don't have anything to add unless anybody's got any questions.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Request for crack sealing of city streets, Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. City's had a preventive maintenance measure in place for a few years for crack sealing bituminous and concrete streets. We typically have done about 100,000 linear feet of crack sealing each year. This year I'm bringing forward to do the same, 100,000 linear feet. This year would be a joint sealing. A lot of our bituminous streets have been overlaid or will be overlaid here shortly. And now it's time to kind of tackle some of the joints that have gotten blown out or worked down over time, some of the sealant in them. Last year we had some heavy rainfalls where we had a lot of water pressure and stuff from heavy truck traffic, especially on 5th northeast over by the DSC building, where the backer rod and stuff was pushed right onto the streets because of all the pressure and of the water. That would be one of the areas that we would want to focus on, and other areas like it. It's preventative in the fact that it doesn't allow any or as much moisture to get down underneath the street and cause issues in the subgrade. So what I'm asking tonight is for approval to award Northwest Asphalt Maintenance the job of crack sealing 100,000 linear feet.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Stordahl?
I think we should move it on.
Money well
It's
spent.
very, very important, and there's a lot of good examples of that around, so.
Mr. Demers, do you have a question, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would agree that this is a maintenance item that's money well spent, but I would just question the time of year, and I guess we got to do what we got to do this year, but I would say for next year, let's do it in May, or I guess right after maybe school, or if we can, and maybe the prices will reflect that, but I guess to me, if you let it go all, I guess I'm not an expert on it, but maybe earlier is better, but if you want to.
Actually, time of year, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference other than the fact that you want to try to maybe do it when it's dry. This whole year's been kind of dry, so towards the mid to the end of the summer is probably the best time weather-wise to do it. And as far as prices go, it depends on, I guess, a lot of different things there. But this at 52 cents linear foot, that isn't much higher than we paid a couple years ago when we did it. So I think that's a pretty reasonable price. But we can definitely look at it sooner and get it on the docket sooner.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, move on. All right, thank you, sir. Number 5, EDA Strategic and Marketing Plans, Mr. Gorte.
Thank you. The EDA is working on strategic and marketing plans to guide its work as it goes forward. In particular, we're at a point right now where it would be, well, one of the things that happened last year when we talked about the monies that were included for the website improvement, there were some questions asked about why don't we look at a marketing plan, general marketing plan for the city, and way to market our lots as well. Well, the EDA has taken that under advisement, discussed that during the year, and has come to the conclusion that let's proceed with that. At this point, we need to have professional expertise in our marketing specialists come in to help us. So what we'd like to do is prepare an RFQ using the monies that were set aside in this year's budget for the website improvement. And in addition, what I've done in next year's.
Henry, please, I'm trying to hear Mr. Gorte, please. Thank you.
What I've done in next year's budget is the commodities and contractuals are the same in next year's budget, but I've moved some money from that line to the marketing line. So anything that's spilled over, that if it costs that's higher than what we have left this year, we have it covered in next year's budget. Okay. So what we're looking to do is prepare an RFQ and get some assistance in that.
Does anybody have questions or anyone want to add, Mr. Potserminski or Mr. Repo?
Yeah, I would like to just echo what Mr. Gorte has said. We believe the EDA is the department that's responsible for marketing the city to businesses, residents, and that we've come to a point where we believe that we have a lot to tell about our community, the good things that are going on, but we are not experts at that, and we think the time is right, and that to invest in a company that does this as a business, as a profession, and make that investment, at least the initial investment, to maybe come up with a plan, and then we would have to decide down the road how much we would like to invest in implementing a marketing strategy or marketing plan once one is conceived and ready to roll. So this is an initial step. I think the rest of the city should take a hard look at budgeting for spending some money on marketing in the future, but this is a step where we could get a company to come in and pitch us for what they could do, and maybe come up with some ideas about how to go about selling this community to businesses and potential residents. So I would ask the council to support this, and open to any questions or comments.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Repo?
No, our hope is just to have more than one or two come in. We'd like to have 3 or 4 come in and propose it so we can get a better feel for it too. But yeah, I'm in favor of this.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Gorte? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Number 6, Housing Incentive Program for Purchasers. Mr. Gorte.
Well, the EDA has been concerned for some time, in particular, about how our lots are selling or not selling. And we've been looking for ways. We've tried a lot of different ways to do things. Part of what we're talking about involves our previous item, but part of it is we look very closely at our incentive programs. And in the incentive programs, we are dealing with 4 basic programs. First program is the $5,000 new construction incentive loan. It's a forgivable 10-year mortgage for $5,000. But what we found statistically is that we're only netting, if the resident doesn't stay there for 10 years, they have to repay the loan in its entirety. What we're finding, for example, in 2013, we had 16 incentive payouts, but there were 14 repayments. That doesn't necessarily mean there were 14 from that year, but there were 14 of the loans that have been given out over the previous 10 years that were repaid because they did not satisfy the 10 years. In 2014, there was 14 payouts and 9 repayments. In 2015, it was 13 payouts and 8 repayments. In 2016, it was 14 payouts and 6 repayments. And so far to date, through the 1st of August, it was 6 payouts and 3 repayments. And we know that there is
at least a $30,000 difference in lot prices between the lots here and the lots on the other side of the river. And in discussions with people, and including realtors, it's come up, and there's real questions about whether this program has value or whether it's serving its purpose to help entice people to come to this side of the river and build homes over here. There are already advantages in place that this doesn't do, and the average length of a person living in a new home is 7 years. So that being the case, the program as structured isn't there. The EDA voted to recommend termination of the program. If you have closed on your lot before December 31st of this year, you'll have through December 31st of next year to close on it, or you can close on your house itself on or before December 31st of this year.
Anybody have any questions or anything to add?
This is also the one that the realtor said doesn't matter.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I think there's any questions on that, 5,000. Mr. Demers does, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about the 280 account. Mayor, we had a discussion a while back about funds and purposes and stuff, and this one has always been kind of a little bit muddy from my recollection. I kind of came on the council after you were here previously, and ever since then there's always been this discussion about what that fund was, what its purpose was. You know, we've heard things from levy maintenance to, you know, to these lot funds and all these other things. And I don't know if you or maybe even Mr. Vedder or Mr. Tweeten have their recollection of when those funds were set up post-flood. What was the purpose of them?
I'm as muddy as you are, if I may speak. But I think it is important to go back probably even to the inception of those funds and look at their original use. Kind of like if we're going to start an infrastructure fund for transportation local share, there probably were some conditions placed on there so that those funds would be used according to the intention of the group at that time. We could sure change it if we wanted to, but I think it would be wise to go back, you know, look through the minutes of when those were formed and what the specified purposes were. And maybe the need was more immediate at that time, but it probably did continue on, and so it's likely to change as circumstances change.
Well, I mean, part of the folklore, I guess, or what the story that's been passed down to me was that those lot funds were intended to be put in, or the proceeds from lot sales were intended to be put into a fund for ongoing levy maintenance. And I guess I don't know if that was true or if we've kind of just veered off of that and or what. I guess I don't remember.
I can tell you at about that time, and I bet Mr. Emery left, but anyone who was here, there was a certain paranoia about levy maintenance. We were all
There should be
skittish.
a paranoia about levy maintenance. We've
Real
got a
skittish.
big bill coming up.
Yeah, long-term, dollar-wise. And so everybody wanted to hedge to make sure that would be funds available. You know, as much as we love the protection, it does bring a cost. And so back then, it was such an unknown. The total dollar bottom line annual cost of levy maintenance, we didn't have a clue. I mean, you could project it, but in real time, what's it going to be? Hard to know.
Okay.
And so, yes, you are correct. At that time, we were really trying to be intentional about creating enough funding to do the perpetual levy maintenance.
And I apologize, this kind of veers from yours, but I just wanted to touch on what the purpose of that 280 fund was or is, or, you know, what we're trying to do.
The EDA is looked at the 280 account with Carla as well, and she's been of great assistance to us in that. And they have great concern about the revenues that are received in the 280 account and the demands on the dollars that are in that account. Right now, our lots, because of the incentive programs, we get payment for the specials on the sale of the lot, but the rest of the dollars basically equal the incentive programs that we have available that are paid out to our lot owners. But this program also pays for the incentives for the homes that are sold at our other subdivisions in town. There's no revenue source to cover that. There's no revenue source that's been dedicated for any of these. The only other revenue that we get for this account are the loan payments, $18,000 per year from Valley Golf, because that loan is also out of this account. So there are no dedicated revenue sources. So how do we pay for these programs without going really deeply into what we want to accomplish and where the revenues are going to come to accomplish those tasks? And the EDA has been discussing this at length over time. And so that's why they went deeply into looking at each program and whether or not they should continue or how they should be funded and what is the purpose of the program and are they achieving what we hope for them to achieve. So that's why we're bringing this to you today. I mean, we have concerns over the 280 account and its long-term viability.
No, I agree, and I've shared those concerns with you for a while now, and I have a personal hard time with this because I've been a beneficiary of that program, and I would think, or I believe that was an incentive to have the type of house, and I pretty much knew I was going to come in or live in East Grand Forks, but I knew I was going to, this helped get into a new house instead of, buying. So it's hard for me in a certain sense to say, well, no, we're going to cut this program. But like you said, if the fund, if it doesn't seem to be maintaining itself, we aren't willing to put funds in to replenish those accounts. And I guess if it's not doing what it's supposed to do is incentivize people building here, then we should think differently, I guess.
We think for the initial decision, the differential in lot prices is huge. And when I've talked to our building inspectors, they told me that there's only a couple $1,000s difference because of the Minnesota building codes, and the differential in cost and the lot prices more than offsets that. Well more than offsets. It's like almost 10, it's like 10 times as much. So therefore, the fact that we have less expensive lots and bigger lots, and speaking in a very biased position, nicer lots, okay, it's not achieving what we're trying to achieve, and we'd like to focus the dollars on things that will achieve what we're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Anything else? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to address this, but I think we're talking about two different issues. Number one is what was the original intention of the 280 fund and the revenue from the lot sales, and I do believe it was towards maintenance of the levee flood protection system. We deviated from that quite some time ago and have subsequently identified a line item on our utility bill that goes towards flood protection. In fact, we've changed the wording on the fees for flood protection, as it used to just say stormwater, because floodwater is stormwater, and now it says stormwater / flood protection, and we've increased that fee, probably not enough to adequately fund the long-term maintenance and pump replacement and everything else that goes into keeping our flood protection system certified to the core standards. So that is something that we've taken steps towards addressing, because that 280 fund was rated, or the original intention was deviated from. So to that issue, I think that answers that question. We did not adhere to that stated purpose of that fund. So having said that, now we're at a point where at current levels and with the remaining lots left, that fund is going to dry up at some point. So we had to make a decision about what to do about it. And unfortunately, I wasn't at the meeting when this decision was made, and I don't know if I would have exactly agreed or maybe had a more vigorous debate about it. What I think we should consider is I think a $5,000 forgivable loan over 10 years for a $450,000 home is not going to make a difference. It's going to make a hill of beans of difference to that resident about where they're going to locate that home. I do think a $7,500 forgivable loan over 5 years, or even a $10,000 forgivable loan for a more affordable house, and we could debate and settle on a home, and just for the sake of discussion, any home smaller than the median of new homes being built would qualify for such a loan. You could increase the amount because there'd be fewer of them. And you would encourage people that might not be able to afford to build a new home it might just put them over the top, to increase that loan amount, shorten the forgivable period, and make that only eligible for a home that does kind of fit into the, not necessarily a starter home, but a home that would be affordable for a family with average means. So I'd like to at least consider keeping some sort of incentive plan, and we can brainstorm and come up with ideas. I just don't want to throw it out without having a good debate about it at the council level. I think it's an EDA program, so that board needed to take some action based on the life of that fund, because it inevitably was going to dry up. So, but I do think rethinking who we target, and not make everybody eligible. If you want to build a $350,000, $400,000 home, go for it, but don't ask us to subsidize it. I think you can rationalize or justify that sort of program. After all, we did lose a lot of those types of homes from the flood, and we've been playing catch up with that for a long time. So I think there is merit to that sort of a program. And I think once all of our lots are sold, which fortunately someday they will be, we can decide then whether it's something we want to fund from the general fund or other ways. So, thank you.
I want to get Mr. Gorte's thoughts on that first, though.
Well, Councilmember Puczynski talked to me about that the other day, and I've been thinking about how to do it. We have another program that is not funded out of this account. It's the down payment assistance program, and we might be able to tweak that program. We proposed a tweak on that, but we might be able to look at it a little bit differently and be able to apply it to new homes as well, provided that their home value does not exceed, or appraised value does not exceed X, and the household income doesn't exceed the amount that an amount that would allow them to pay for that home. I haven't had a chance to talk to Councilman Puczynski about that, but that's something that's been going through my mind. Just that, as he said, when you're putting down a $5,000 incentive on a $400,000 home, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in that regard. So how do we deal with that when the program isn't funded?
So my initial question would be then, too, is do you want to take this back to EDA and come back as a whole?
It will go back to EDA. There are parts in here that we need to address tonight, however.
Okay.
This part of it, we can restructure and bring something back, and it might be an offshoot of the down payment assistance program, but I will talk with the EDA about that in an upcoming meeting.
So what ones on your list here, landscaping, property tax, and the down payment, which ones need to be acted on tonight then?
Landscaping, the purpose of the landscaping is beautification. We spend roughly under $6,000 per year on that program. It's achieving its purpose, and we're getting the trees and shrubs. The EDA recommended that stay in place. The program, the property tax rebate, the realtors said that is a very beneficial program that needs to be renewed now. We recommend that be renewed, because that is having an impact, and that is something that people have talked about making a difference in their decision, the rebate, which is unlike something that is across the river or other places.
So if you went back and brought back the $5,000 forgivable loan and the down payment assistance one, you could do that as long as we act on the landscaping grant and property tax rebate one tonight.
Well, I don't think the landscaping grant has to have any action, but the other one does have to have some action.
Property tax
which
rebate.
I was planning to bring forth to you, the property tax rebate. Because after the council decides whether to proceed with that, then I have to go to the school district and the county, because they won't act unless we've acted first.
So this won't be next week?
The only part that I would bring up to you next week would be the would be the property tax rebate.
Okay, right, so that's be the only,
Down payment assistance, I think we can talk about that program at our next meeting, which is next week, come back in 2 weeks. I do know there is someone who's hoping that the program will be revised. Our proposed changes were to change the house value to $200,000 and to change the income value to $100,000. But the other thing might be to change for a new home to increase those limits a little bit more. But we can bring that back to you at that time.
I just want to make sure that what you need acted on.
We do need to move ahead on the property tax rebates. I don't want to let that delay, if that's acceptable with you.
Mayor, you have questions?
Well, since we raised the question about the origin of the 280 fund, is there a staff person who would be willing to go back and research that to the old minutes and find out what really was the intent of that fund at its inception? Is there anyone willing to offer to do that?
I would be happy to work with Megan on that.
Thank you. It's important to know. Yeah.
Just say yes, man.
I mean, we
You
hang
didn't
these
see
questions
Megan's
out
face
there in
on
the
this.
wind, and then they get unresolved. Perfect. And really, it could happen in the next month or so, but if it happened by Tuesday, that'd be better.
Okay, so you're going to bring, next week, and you're going to bring property tax rebate forth. The rest of them, you're going to come back at a later date. Okay. Anything else you need tonight, sir?
No, that is not for you.
Anything else, sir, then?
Not on this topic.
Okay, just
Thank
wanted
you.
to make sure.
Thank you, Paul.
Number 7, discussion on 218 prelim budget. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the last budget discussion meeting, council directed staff to take a look at, see what could be done if, or what the impact could be if we changed the budget by adding $20,000 removed to the fund balance and $100,000 removed to the street maintenance / repair fund. We as department heads did meet as a group, and if that is direction from the council, we would be recommending the following items to be eliminated to accomplish that goal. First is the fire department suburban at $53,500, police department ATV at $12,000, police department, and I'll make this correction, LED traffic sign, it should not say signal, LED traffic sign for $16,000, and parks and recreation to pick up for $45,000, for a total of $126,500, which is a little bit more than the $120,000, but as we all know, that it's getting to an exact zero is kind of a tough item. But anyways, so we do have the department heads here. One thing I will like to discuss with the council prior to any decision on this is that obviously it is the council's decision and discretion to make any changes to the budget and to set the final budget. However, we just want the council to be aware of what the impacts would be by eliminating these items, to provide the council with that so that they can make an informed choice for the pros and cons of moving the $120,000 if that is the wishes of the council. So
with that move, for people who can't see it and look at it, what does that do to the levy at this time with these changes? What does that do? Where's it at?
Carl, I think we're at 10% right now, but it would
Still at
be
10%.
levy
So
neutral.
with these,
Yep.
I just want everybody to know that. With these, you're still at the 10% levy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Just want everybody to know that.
just changing where the money is going.
Right. So,
Coming out of our last meeting, there was much more than 120 to cut. Have you found those other funds?
Yes, we are at a balanced budget now with,
We actually just had to make a couple adjustments because of the promotions in the police department. We had put them in on the line item, but now we have exact numbers. So right now, we're at, without the 126, we're at a negative $1,300. Oh.
so, and I guess that's maybe Clarence will disagree, but that is essentially the balanced budget. I mean, it's always going to, you hardly ever get to zero. You hardly ever get to exact zero on these,
Clarence, comments on that? No.
So yeah, so we are at a balanced budget then at the 10% with it being in here. Just we're talking about where that money goes now.
I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that it wasn't bringing that 10% down already is, it's at the 10%, so everybody knew that. I know Mr. Repel had some questions or some thoughts that he did.
I got those answered by Mr.
Did
Murphy.
you?
this
Okay, I just wanted to
afternoon.
make sure you got those answered.
And it's kind of convenient that you've laid out these several items roughly equal to the amount that we would hope to set aside. But there would be other ways of finding $120,000, not these items, right? You cut out a lot more than this, and there would be ways other than these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4 items to come up with another $120,000. And it's a convenient thing to throw these items against some long-term savings. That's a responsible step for our community. And if that's how we want to do it, that's great. But the reality is there are other ways to find savings other than these 4 items.
I guess when we met on this, I guess we looked at these as our, not our least important, but the ones that we would, that would probably have the least amount of impact in the, at least here in the short term, as far as what the department needs were, or items that we could get by without here in the short term. So I guess that's all I have to say about that.
I would just say that if you're looking at 120,000 off other items not here, then we'll have to cut staff. Because there's really there's no fluff in the budget. There's not a lot of fluff. I mean, you'd have to cut all the travel. We wouldn't get any training. You'd have to cut our communications or you'd have to cut utilities. I mean, most of our fluff items are capital. I mean, and you can, department heads can agree or disagree with me, but, if you had to come back and ask, where would you cut another $20,000 in each department? It'd have to be out of supplies and training, travel, communications, and you can ask them, but that would be my personal opinion on looking in the budget. And David, you can answer to that too.
Well, I would agree with that. You're not going to find that in supplies or those type of things. It's going to be either staff or some of our compliance issues like training and that. And some of that we can't get rid of either due to the requirements that we have, particularly fire department, police department, public works. There's just continuing ed that has to be taken. That it's not really a choice.
I guess off the top of my head, the only thing that we could actually find any dollars like that would be street reconstruction, which Jason uses every year to fix like the parking lots and the streets that we're talking about. So, I mean, off the top of my head, that's the only item I could find.
Mark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I was going to kind of weigh in in similar fashion, I guess. I agree with the mayor that we should work towards these goals of putting money, and we've discussed this, putting money away for, long-term street maintenance projects and all those other things that we know that are coming forward and trying to bend those cost curves down. But the problem I have is when we look to do that, the easiest, fastest way to do all that is looking at one-time capital cuts. Well, the problem with doing it that way is that we're looking at saving this money every year. So that money's not coming back. So you're just, those capital cuts don't get you anywhere. They just keep piling up. So unless we're willing to look at structural changes to how we're doing things, which in the course of the city, our personnel, I mean, we're a service industry. What we do is service. So if we want to change those things, and I'm willing to have discussions on those things or how we staff or whatever, but I wouldn't feel, do I think we need all those things on there? Maybe not, but capital cuts don't get us any further down the road. They just delay something. So I'm not especially excited about doing it that way. But like I said, if we want to have a real discussion about what services we provide and how many people it takes to provide them, then we can have that discussion. I'm not in the mood for, it's not a happy thing to have to do, but, nobody wants to put people's jobs or careers or whatever out of business or whatever, but we have to be realistic about what we can provide as a city, what we should be providing as a city, and to what levels. And so I guess I wanted to weigh in on the way that we were getting to that 125. It might work this year, but we're going to be compounded next year when we have all the capital cuts that you have to get to another 125 next year, and on top of everything that didn't get purchased this year. We've done this before. We've put off capital payments, and part of the reason why we have high levies the last few years is because we were catching up on paying for all those things that we just said we aren't going to raise the levy for. So, like I said, I'm definitely in the sabbatical with you on the goal. I definitely want to, but I just would like to get at it in a different way, I guess, if we're going to do it. It's real, and it takes some guts, I think, from anybody that wants to do it, because it's saying we're going to have to cut staff from 70 to 65 or something like that, to get to that. So that's my 2 cents.
Clarence.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Demers. That was spot on. I agree with everything that you said. Ms. Anderson, when you say that if we're going to not do capital, that we're going to have to cut staff, you're telling me then that the FTEs, the full-time equivalents in the 2018 budget, are exactly the same as the 2017 budget?
The only one that we had position we were going to put in there was in the parks, and that we took that out for those savings and that since we came back. So the only opening that I'm aware of right now is in the truck driving. We have a truck driver available now, which Jason talked about, and do we have police now? Are you fully staffed?
One police officer position that is now.
Okay, but I'm confused now. So if you took out, so apparently the park was asking for one full-time in the
Correct.
2018, and you took that out, and that's not included on your list here to get to the 126.
No, it's already to get to this. We got to this from where we were before. So for the number where we started now, what we brought back, this number here, the 4939, that's been taken out of that.
So you've actually cut more than the 126
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my point, Clarence.
Yes.
Okay.
Is they were quite a ways off the mark.
Yes.
So yes, they took out more than just these 4
Yeah.
capital
Correct.
items
Sorry,
to get
sorry,
to
yes.
there. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
So what is that?
Yeah,
dollar
so
amount?
when we first started, we were at 57,000 to the whole. So,
No, you're in negative 1,300, you said?
yes, the number you have on here is the 49. And like I said, I'm sorry because Terry changed it today. And what, actually, the biggest issue was that we know one of the police officers is getting married in February, and so he'll probably be taking the family insurance, which made a $6,000 difference.
So can you say we're at $175,000, $170-some thousand you cut? Or I
Yeah,
guess
that
that's the number.
position was around $60,000 is what we had figured in for that extra
So
Parks and Rec position. So if we did this, then that would be 180,000.
180,000.
If I may, or do you have someone else ready?
No, you go, maybe hand a second. I'm just kidding.
It's no mystery that a priority for me is public safety. And I feel a little bit like a previous mayor who really liked flowers, and so when the budget got tight, yeah, well, there's no flowers. But this is my equivalent of flowers is public safety, police and fire. That's the bottom rung, the foundational component to quality of life in our community. If we fail at public safety, we fail as a city, period. People need to be safe, and they need to know that they're safe. Police, fire, emergency rescue services that these folks provide. And so this is the equivalent of my flowers that you're talking about here. And I understand it's an interesting year with the loss of 87,000 $737 in local government aid. That's money we had to come up with in a levy increase because of the loss of close to $90,000 revenue that would have come from the state the previous year but did not come. So we have to account for that. I do find it a little troubling, though, that what we're being told now is the only way to balance this budget is with a 10% levy increase. That's the only way that's going to balance. Why does that concern me? Because going forward, that's what it's going to take to balance this budget. Year after year is about a 10% gross levy increase, which hopefully shows up to each family member a little less than 5%. Still faster than the rate of inflation. I don't prefer that, particularly where at that pace, we're not setting aside anything into the reserves. We're at zero. Nothing going into reserves at that point. At a 10% gross levy increase, which again, we're going to work really, really hard to keep it under 5% per family. Okay, but if that's where we are, if it takes a 10% gross levy increase, if we're asking our families to come up with 5% increase from one year to the next, indefinitely, and not setting aside anything into reserves, I have a big problem with that. And I think we should all have a big problem with that. Now, maybe we don't lose 90,000 LGA each year. Maybe we do. I don't know. But that's the reality this year. So the thought of a 10% levy increase, hopefully less than 5% per family, and not contributing anything to the reserves of any kind, any of the reserves, we should all be very concerned about that, I feel.
Anything else, sir? Good. You know, I did some research too, and looked at what the average was for last 2008, I think 2007 timeframe. It's been an average of 3%. If you take in account two large ones the last 2 years, and you look at it, so I understand what you're saying, you know, that at the time, even with Mark, when comments about we were catching up in the last 2 years, trying to get where we need to be. You know, we had to do that, and that's, you know, unfortunate what we had to do. Plus, with losing the LGA, which I'm hoping that this doesn't go any farther for the next couple of years, so that we have to keep trying to make up another 80,000, another 90,000, another 100,000. Hopefully, that we don't have any issues like that. It's great that we'll grow and be prosperous in the city, but also then we have to look at what services we do have. I think that's very important. I think that, I know there was items that, not putting you on the spot, Mr. Riepel, items that you questioned, Mr. Murphy gave you the answers to. I think there's still things, even though we're taking it out of that account, we're still paying it back. It's still part of the general budget at the end of the day. So, I mean, I think
there's a good 120,000 out there.
I still think there's, even though it comes out of this account, it still has to get paid back so much per year. And I think that some of those things need to be looked at. I know that we can set this at 10% and come back and lower it over the next month and a half time frame. But I think maybe we need to look at some of the, you know, look at some of Mr. stuff for Riepel. I don't know, maybe you should share them with people too. You send the list that you brought up with. If you want to send it out to everybody, have them look at it, or you want to talk about it, you know, it's something maybe.
I can talk about it if they want to hear it. One area is in the park and rec. We discussed there's a $40,000 expenditure there for shelters. We've got shelters, putting in some new ones. The current ones we have aren't being utilized to their fullest extent. I think we could cut $40,000 off on that. There's some paint at the VFW and BLC. That's another $40,000. We could, I'm sure we could get that done for less than 40 if we had to. The park and rec plan, we discussed that. We said that's about 60 grand. We could probably leave that in, but it could be half that price. We could cut that back. Public Works has a mower for $65,000. You've got one already, right?
The issue we have with
mowers. It's just, as they're getting old, we can't get any parts for them. So as we retire some of them, I mean, we have to retire. So we just, that's why we set up a replacement schedule last year, was to try to replace some of those older ones. You know, if we had to make it through one more year, we could make it through one year.
That's just several of them thrown out there. The half-ton pickup is 30 grand. Most of the other ones we had already agreed on. That's just,
I just wanted you to make
yeah,
sure.
that's just a
have the
few of them.
opportunity.
That's, and again, I know you're against the capital ones being moved on. Some could be taken totally off, some could be deferred for a year or two, depending on how their budgets are for that particular year. I'm not against the shelters, Henry. I'm for the shelters, but unfortunately at this point in time, I think the utilization on the ones we have is low, and to build new ones at this point, we'd be better off. Yes.
I just want to comment on the shelters, that I have talked with Reed, and the ones we're looking at doing and repairing. For example, Stoss Park, which is really in disarray, and I think it even got hit by the wind. And that plan is to come out of the building maintenance fund, which was set up because of this sitting right here, just like you said. You know, I'm sure in the past, we look at all those capital items, okay, we don't have money to do this, we cut that, which hurt all our facilities very badly throughout the years. And so that fund was set up for that purpose itself. So that's where the shelter would be coming out of. That's where the painting for the VFW and the Blue Line Club would come out. So that does not affect our levy here.
Okay.
And that fund is set up strictly for that, so we can't use that money to replace some of those general levy things. And not against, I mean, I'm definitely for keeping our fund balance where it needs to be. And the reason I said that about the salaries is that we as staff need a direction on what areas do you want us to cut back on. And so I'm just asking for those guidelines so that we have something to, base our work on in the next month or two, whatever. What are some of your ideas, do you want to cut, and I know you said public safety. Public safety is over 40% of our budget. So.
Hang on a second, Henry, just 1 second. So to take the money out of that fund to do the shelters, what money goes back into that fund then?
The $250 that comes from water and light every year.
So that's the only thing that goes in there.
Correct.
So if we get so many items that we have to take out of there, that's one of the problems that I've looked at, that, I know Henry's tried to get that raised, but I think there's only so much we can do in that.
Right. But there is it's basically a 5-year plan in the book here.
I understand that.
Where we'd have $500,000 in the next, 5
just want everybody
years.
to understand what that fund is, because it's not a fund that we do put money into, but really the citizens still do. And so I just want everybody to understand that. But I just wanted to make sure that we talk about him. I know that Mr. Murphy wanted to say something regarding, or do you still have the comment?
I can read.
Okay. Henry?
I disagree with you on parks. I've been involved with parks for a lot of years. What I've suggested is that we use a small park. We're talking, instead of a $12,000 park shelter, we're talking about $2,500. We're trying to promote new homes out in the Point. We're trying to do it in the North End. And we've got a park shelter in the Stouse Park that was built out of lumber in 1966. That's quite a while ago. And we want our city to be a place where young people with families will be. We have a lot of small parks too. I'm saying to try it. There's lots of places you can cut. We're dealing with many millions of dollars. But I've promoted a lot of things in my life, and I haven't been wrong too many times, because I think I have a pretty good feel for what a family wants. We used to have a Sherlock Park, we used to bring 4,000 to 5,000 people there on a Saturday and Sunday. So, and I headed it up.
I agree, Andy.
So,
Things have changed, though.
I'm just telling you, it's making a big mistake, and there's a lot of things that you better try something. We've got a situation up in the north end. Something should be done up there too, on lots. We're nickeling and diming it. We're selling one lot at a time, one lot at a time. You better go in there and get people and sell blocks of 5, 10 lots at a shot. Otherwise, the assessment's going to eat you up. And there's no question about it. Right now, it's our ownership of the lots in the north end is a liability. Quit from there. I can go on and on for a long time.
Mr. Murphy.
The only thing I want to say is, correct me if I'm wrong, Carla, but I think the personnel costs with the step increases, the anticipated wage increases, and that it was around 7%.
Yeah, it varies from year to year when I looked at the past, just because of, openings or whatever, but between 6 and 7%.
That's what the labor cost didn't actually go quite different. It went up around, let's say 7%. The majority of the rest of the costs for this particular year for going up that mark were in our capital costs, particularly recreation and culture, parks and rec, and the public works. They went up 130,000 and 162,000 proposed. Both of these just due to the Parks and Rec and the other expenditures on it, just due to the fact that we are still trying to catch up with some of the items that we have put off throughout the years. So, particularly in Parks and Recreation, that has been that's on
Mr. President. Just a couple comments, or one thing a request, I guess, for staff. We talk about LGA receding, or how much we're getting receding. It would be interesting to track, or start tracking, or even if we can start going back, to see if we could track the decrease in or any potential decrease in LGA funds, and see what that's offset by our natural levy increase. And what I mean by natural levy increase would be if we kept it at 0, what would be our just revenue increase from growth and valuation and those type of things. I guess the reason why I'm saying is, if we're going to be, if we're having a problem with LGA and we're being outpaced by if our decreases are being outpaced by, or not being outpaced by our revenues, then we should have a problem with the levy or the LGA formula. And I don't know if there's a way to do that except for if we start tracking it ourselves. So it's kind of a longer term problem, but I think we should start.
There's a page in the back here that has our tax levy by year and then has a local government aid in the column next to it.
Right, but that tax levy also has increase into it, right? I mean, that's what we're setting it at. I'm saying, what's the valuation change, and if we keep the levy at 0, does the valuation of our city change enough? Because basically what they're saying with the LGA is you're going to get less LGA because you're becoming a more valuable city, right? Or you're able to sustain it. And what I'm saying is we should be able to track that and say, if our tax capacity at year 0, peg it to a year, make this year 0 or last year 0, just like a CPI or something like that. And then over time, you should be able to say, no, our tax levy is actually staying, it isn't being reduced by the same amount as it's going up. But
because we levy gross dollars, if we say 0, it will be 0.
No, but I'm saying the rationale in the formula is saying that because our tax capacity or whatever is going up because of whatever, we should be getting that $90,000 back without even raising our levy.
But if it goes 0, it'll be 0. It'll be a flat. It won't go up. So I hear what you're saying. If it was a percentage of ownership
Well-
of home value, and we kept that percentage constant, then over time revenues would go up. But we levy gross dollars, total dollars collected.
Right.
And if we set zero, we'll get zero. No matter what the property values do, and we say zero, we get zero.
Well, 0% increase is what I'm saying.
So it won't go up with the valuation going up. It will stay to the gross dollars of where we were the year before.
And there is another page, it says 106
That
on here.
tax
where you have
rate
The
page.
real property on there, the tax capacity, and you can
Right.
see how that's going up. The hard thing is, we can't distinguish if that tax capacity went up because your home valuation went up, or if Joe Smith built his home and that went up. There's, I don't know of any way, we kind of asked the county, and I don't think they really have any way. I know we've asked just for the median of the houses value, which is difficult to get.
Okay. Well, we're going to have ammunition if we want, if we think that this LGA stuff is not fair, I guess is my point, and that would be one way to do it. Second of all, on the personnel thing, I made the comment that if we want to, get to somewhere where this is structurally sound, we have to start looking at personnel. I want to emphasize or underline that if we reduce personnel, we are reducing service. And I don't think that there's, anybody here that thinks that we have just people sitting in the closet doing nothing. So instead of thinking of it as a reduction in personnel, we should say, this is the list of services that we have, and are there ones that we don't need to do? And if we don't do these, can you reduce, or would there be a reduction in personnel after it? So I don't think we should look at it as we need to go from 70 to 65. We should say we do this, 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 and this, and if we don't think we want to do those things, then we shouldn't do them, I guess. So, and then to that public safety thing, I think every politician that sits at the table will always say, public safety all the way. I mean, I'm not trying to accuse you of being just a person that's spewing pablum or whatever. I understand it. I'm just saying public safety means a lot of things to a lot of people. For some, it's cops on the street. For some, it's, the fire call. To some, it's making sure they have enough money in their wallet to go buy bread. There's some, it's making sure that the streets are not all potholed so there's no accident. So we can throw a lot at a certain definition of public safety and disregard the other and not really get at a balanced approach to what public safety really is. And cops on the street are important and, all these other things, but we look at it, I just think there's a limit too, right? If everything was if you're a hammer, everything's a nail, or whatever, and we got a lot of issues and public safety concerns in the town, and how do we maximize or optimize for those, I guess, is my point. So.
Thank you. Just a brief comment on public safety, and when we talk about public safety, we talk about fire and police. Our fire department works in partnership with the townships, and the townships contribute to their own protection with that partnership, with personnel and resources, revenue. Police, we police our streets. Been lots of discussion about the unique problems that we have with the way the town is laid out, our proximity to a larger community across the river. One thing that I do want to bring up, and that is that we are the largest city in Polk County, and our police department is counted on to patrol and respond to situations on the western portion of that county, and we're sometimes taken for granted by the rest of the county, and this might be a little bit controversial, but I'm just going to say it, that the sheriff's department knows that if there's something that goes on in northwest Polk County that the first responders are probably going to be East Grand Forks, because they don't have the resources to have sheriff deputies patrolling every corner of the county. And we benefit from being in Polk County, but we also are the largest community, and I think we should count on our county commissioners to make sure that we maybe take a look at finding a way to rectify that situation. I've talked with the chief about this over the years, and it's a situation that's existed and it's complicated, but I do think it is worth opening up a conversation, maybe figuring out a way that we either get compensated for that, or we have the sheriff's department take some of the pressure off our police department for the calls that need to be made as part of the county. So with that, I'll just leave that hanging out there.
I hope you know that as I'm looking at preserving this fund of dollars set aside, the easy thing to do this year would be to say, shoot, let's just put out the 126,500. We don't need to put anything into reserves this year. That'd be the easy thing to do, but it really does not set us up well for the coming years. And I think there's a good argument to be made, and so now I'm going to argue against myself. In a year where you're losing 90,000 plus or minus in LGA, to think about creating a reserve as you lose that sum is a dicey proposition, and I know that. The question, though, that we don't have answered is, what will LGA do in the future years? Okay, that's what we don't know. How often do they revise those numbers? How often do they recalculate all of that? I know we probably did just go through a kind of a revaluation at the county-wide level, and maybe it wouldn't be till the next one of those, close looks that something like this could happen. And so I think the city is in a really, really good spot. When you're faced with to create a reserve or get the things you really want or need, that's a good place to be. We're not saying, gee, how are we going to pay for basic services? We're not asking that question. We're asking, how do we take care of infrastructure needs today instead of creating that reserve? I like where we are. I like the conversation. I like the idea of not deferring capital purchases or not deferring maintenance, because the bill is always higher on the back end. And so exactly how we work through to try to preserve some of these or all of these items and still operate really responsibly for the out years. Because the minute we go to zero into reserves this year, you really have not created that increment that you're going to need in the future years to contribute to those reserves. You really haven't preserved that capacity to do that.
Anything else?
Good.
Mr. President, I'd like to make one comment. One thing that everybody's got to understand that puts the city of East Grand Forks in a difficult position, it's a question of tax capacity. The reality of it is that East Grand Forks in the lake area, Union Lake and Island Lake and Maple Lake and a few other, are carrying the county because the cities and villages are all old. We've got a whole different ballgame. And that situation is going to continue until our tax capacity increases. We've got 2 large apartment houses that will get on the tax rolls pretty soon. We have another one up here, Century Apartments. But there's another thing that happens that everybody's got to realize. We're sitting in a metropolitan area. We have 29 here, Highway 29 and number 2. The chief can tell you that the people who are dealing in drugs, primarily in drugs, take and come here because their identity is hidden because of Grand Forks. Drugs cost our city lots of money for police work. Am I right, Chief? tremendous amount, and they're doing a tremendous job, and it's dangerous. So we've got some things that are going to change eventually, but one thing that's not going to change is that we are the gem of the whole Polk County. That's the thing. It's as simple as that. But there are some things that can help us with growth, and the important thing is to do things that create business and industry, because they pay for themselves. That's why I have very strong opinions on certain things when we start talking about businesses. I'll shut up because I should be at the Legion for the annual dinner. Excuse me. So. Otherwise, I'll have cold beans at home.
And on that note, so right now, you have it set, it's still at 10%. We can set it at 10%. We can still have many discussions going forth. So Tuesday, when we approve it, we can still look at it and come back and go, okay, no, we want to set it at this. So I think we're at great discussion. I think we'll leave it where we're at right now on this. Don't go anywhere, Mike, because we have closed session after this. Don't get too excited.
I told Henry. He said you don't
Yes.
need me.
I like the ideas that Mark talked about. Could we get some help maybe on a list on what service we have? I mean, the services that they want. I mean,
I don't think, and I don't understand what Mark's saying, but I don't think that's going to be a discussion or a thing that you're going to decide within 2 months. I could be wrong, but
Similar to the mayor's talking about starting a fund, whether it's you start it next year or this year, I would say that it would be a good exercise, whether you get it done in 2 months or not, but to start it anyway, is how do you inventory the services that we provide? I mean, I've never done it, so I'm seriously, I would have to put Mr. Murphy to school on it, but, go inventory the services that you do and what's their FTE impact, and I guess if that's a 2-month project, I don't know. If it's a 5-year project, I don't know, but I don't think it would hurt to start it sooner than later.
I just want to make sure the expectation of getting to that point where there might not happen within that 2-month time frame, because I don't think it's going to be a 2-month decision of what's going to go on.
I'll still take a vote, no matter what.
David?
I guess, one thing I'll say, I have been involved in these projects before where we looked at this, and I can tell you it's not a 2-month project and it's not a 5-year project either. I would say, depending if you're doing in-house in 6 to 9 months. And you're looking
Right in
at
time for next year's budget.
Yeah. You're looking at things like cost per hour for patrolling, those kind of things. If fire department calls, those are easier to quantify, where you get into more of the subjective and harder to quantify ones are, what's the value of the community development? What's the value of the permitting process? What's the value of the Parks and Rec? Particularly things like pools and that. Pools they lose a lot of money, particularly in this type of area. So
Water,
yeah. So those are the harder ones to quantify. Usually the public safety is much easier, but yeah, how much is administration and finance worth?
Well, they're going to say
Don't
lose
go
money.
down that
Go ahead.
There's one more way also. I got cornered by several of your officers last Thursday as I was coming by the admin office to have my office hours. Oh yeah, lights and sirens and the whole works. No, it was in the hallway. We were on foot. And we got to talking about some things that I had said in a previous meeting about really wanting to run on the lean side of things, every one of us. And what I told these officers is, You know, the kind of lean that I've been studying, that I've been trying to adopt, is the kind of lean that says, I'm not going to tell you how to take out some unnecessary step from your process. To me, the way, and again, these authors are saying the way you create a lean culture is every one of us makes a commitment to look at everything we do and say, number one, does this really have to be done? If it doesn't have to be done, if the product of what I'm about to do right here isn't really helping anyone, why am I doing it? Let's just stop it. I don't have to optimize it. I don't have to, squeeze out the waste of it. I just stop it because it does not have to be done. And nobody has to tell me that. Intuitively, I know, or maybe I ask my supervisor, hey, do we really need this? Is this really something that we should even still be doing from 23 years ago? And then you take the next step of saying, hey, I'm going to gas and check the oil and grease my lawnmower. And I got the gas can in the shed over there, and you guys, I'm sure you're way better than this, but and the grease gun is in the pickup over there, and the fuel, and it's all weird corners of everywhere. And what do? Well, I do this process every day. I grease and gas and whatever, service my mower. I'm going to put the items that I need in close proximity to where I need them so as to make it as absolutely lean as it can possibly be. And it's a commitment that I have made to my station of what I do for the city. And then and it never ends. You say it's not a 1 month process and it's not a 5-year process, but it's a continual process. It's a forever process. It's kind of a commitment that we make to saying, does this really have to be done? And if it does, am I doing it in the most efficient way? And the answer is no, because this certain favorite author I have, he likes to say, I'm 90% waste. So I say this, I'm 90% waste, which means I can improve on everything I do to some extent. It's a good way to look at things. It's not a frantic way. It's actually kind of a peaceful way because you're fixing what bugs you. You're streamlining what you do, and you're doing it voluntarily because you like to do stuff in a smooth way. So I wanted to, the police officer said, have you told that to the group? Have you told that to the council? I said, no, they don't have to. Yeah, they need to hear that. So when I ever talk about lean, it really is each one of us in a pleasant way, not in a frantic way, but in a pleasant way. Look at what we do. Does it have to be done, yes or no? If it doesn't have to be done, stop it. And if there is a better way, because there always is a better way, find it, and then step by step go in that direction. Okay, I'm done.
Anybody else have any comments right now? I think if you have some ideas or processes or anything like that, let Mr. Murphy know, and he will pass those on so that Ms. Anderson can look at them also, and we'll go from there. Is everybody okay with that? Sounds good. Appreciate it. I entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Demers, second by Vetter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. 5 minute, and we'll go on to closing session.